Welcome to In the Black, the podcast that shines a light on resilience, transformation, and the power of reinvention. I'm Araceli, and each week my co-host Shannon and I sit down with incredible women who have faced some of life's hardest challenges, from personal setbacks to societal obstacles, and have emerged on the other side stronger, driven, and ready to make a difference.
On In the Black, we celebrate these stories of strength and success, diving deep into the journeys of women who turned pain into purpose, adversity into action, and now dedicate themselves to making the world a better place in their own way. They're here to inspire, share hard-earned wisdom, and remind us all, no matter how dark things may seem, life is cyclical and dawn is coming. So whether you're looking for inspiration, motivation, or just a reminder that change is always possible, this is the podcast for you. Welcome to In the Black.
Today's guest is a woman whose life reads like a tapestry of courage, creativity, and divine timing. Sophia began her journey in the world of architecture, where she had the unique opportunity to work alongside futurist Buckminster Fuller. Her path then took a creative turn as she ran a couture, dress designing business before answering a deeper calling, returning to school at the age of 50 to earn her master's in counseling. Sophia now serves as an in-house counselor as a residential facility for survivors of trafficking through the Salvation Army. But what truly sets Sophia apart is how she has embraced what she calls the divine language of coincidence, the subtle yet powerful nudges from the universe that led her through profound personal transformation, including a miraculous shift in her marriage. She's the author of The Divine Language of Coincidence: How Miracles Transformed My Life After I Began Paying Attention. And today she joins us to talk about caregiving, healing, intuition, and how each of us can co-create miracles when we start listening to the whispers of the divine. Welcome. We are so excited to have you on our podcast, Sophia.
Thank you.
Yes,
And thank you for
thank
the
you for
invitation.
coming.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Can you tell us a little bit about where you're at and what you're doing right now with your life?
Well, right now, I just retired from working for the Salvation Army and being an in-house therapist or counselor. And the reason why I'm using counselor is because one of my clients said to me, "I'm so glad you don't use the word therapist and you use the word counselor." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Why?" And she goes, "Because if you break it up, it's the rapist." So I avoid that word. So it was trauma filled. Um, I had some few but amazing successes, so that's what counts in this environment. um, and it's been an interesting sort of career path. How it was at first, it was, oh, I just want to design beautiful buildings, and then working with Buckminster Fuller, um, it was like, no, we're solving problems here, shelter problems. And then my last stint in that career was designing biotechnology laboratories. And that took me so far from beauty that I just left and started my dress designing business. And what I noticed, and then again, I just wanted to design beautiful clothes, but it got boring fast. Okay. And what I noticed was some of my beautiful, extremely wealthy clients were miserable, like miserable. And then some of my big clients, were just like living it up. And I thought, what's wrong with this picture here? And what I came to observe is um, self-esteem. Low self-esteem can attack anyone. So that's when I went back to school and came out with my master's in counseling psychology. And then I designed a 12 workshop program to build self-esteem in incarcerated women. And it started with incarcerated women because they were like a you know, an audience that wasn't going to go anywhere, you know. So, and then I didn't get funding. The prison system wouldn't give me funding, so I got funding from the Department of Economic Development, and then I did it for a lot of at-risk women. So it was like my purpose. What I found to be my purpose was helping others, you know, in the best way I can. So that's how it brought me to today.
Well, let's start at the beginning. So, before the book, the counseling, and even the design work, what were some early experiences or beliefs that shaped how you view life, intuition, and purpose?
Okay. I'm gonna give a lot of credit to my mother. So, so my mother was deeply religious, and but it wasn't that she was just religious. She drew her spirituality from her religion, and she prayed in the morning. She prayed at night. She never pushed it on me, but what she would say to me is, you know, because in Greek is my first language, and any item or object can be turned into a diminutive. So it's kind of like cute, cuter. So you can say, okay, the glass, and then by adding, you know, the ending, it's the little glass. So she would say, you know, Sophia, if you want anything, just just ask little baby Jesus, and you know, just ask him for anything. He loves children. And then she would say, now if you're scared, you know, sometimes you get up in the middle of the night and you're scared, just ask the little Virgin Mary to protect you. So I saw that what happened here is from a toddler. When I was a toddler, you know, communicating with unseen beings was perfectly natural. And I found myself doing it all my life, you know. I would say um, when I was 19, this is when I had my first miracle. And by miracle, I mean getting exactly what you need at just the right time. Before that, I'm just going to give um, a basic kind of overview of my belief system. Okay. So I believe that there is this divine intelligence that knows what's best for us better than we do and communicates with us by via dreams, uh, meeting a stranger that says exactly what you needed to hear, or by putting coincidences in our path, and then so when I mean, everybody has a coincidence story, you know. So there's meaningful coincidences and there's just coincidence. I was told about 16, 17 years ago, I met up with a medium, a world famous medium. And that's in the book because I had no desire to go to a medium. And she told me that I was going to write a book. And I argued with her. I said, no, I'm sorry, that's not in the cards. You know, I said, I have nothing to say. And plus, I said, I'm a people person. There is no way that I'm going to sequester myself somewhere and write. And she listened to me. And then she said, word for word, she said, Spirit says, when she's ready, there are many spirits here to help her and many hands on earth. So in 2011, I was reconnecting with a childhood friend, and I told her my latest miracle, and she said, oh, these things only happen to you, like everybody else would say. And this time something clicked. And I thought, wait a second, you know, the number of events are incredible. So what I did is I listed all the miracles that I could think of. And what I found was preceding each miracle was a coincidence. And what happened was I took action on that coincidence. I could have said in every case, oh, wow, what a coincidence, and just let it go by. But by taking action on a coincidence, what happens is we co create with divine intelligence or God or whatever you want to call it. And we get hopefully the miracle. And you don't get the miracle just because you ask for it either, you know. So, but if you're open, these things will just happen. and and there were so many events that what I did is I plucked out all of the ones that related to death. And that became my second book, Consciousness Beyond Death. True stories of signs, messages, and timing. And it's I just finished the audiobook, and I just can't believe that these things really did happen, but they did, you know. So, and I truly believe that these are available to everyone. So when I was 19, I was going through two issues. They were like existential issues for me that seemed unsolvable. So the first issue was that I wanted people's approval. Getting people's approval was very important to me. And of course, I wouldn't get it all the time. And it would just bog me down. Like, I don't understand. I think I'm a good person. What is this person's problem with me? You know? And I couldn't digest it. Okay. The other issue was I kind of had bought my mother's law about no sex until marriage. And well, I had just met this man, and I thought, wait a second, you know, because marriage seemed unsavory to me. Like I had issues with that followed me later. Um, I thought, well, what if I don't get married? Am I going to die a virgin? Like, I'm sorry, but that just wasn't working for me anymore. So what happened is, and this man, I was 19, he was 27. He was working on his PhD on universal theory, you know, like opposite of me. I was a party girl, okay? So I had this dream. And I'm just going to tell you the beginning and the ending of this dream. So I had a dream where I was on stage in an auditorium and I was wearing a wedding dress with a veil, but there was no groom. And I was inside a plexiglass box because I remember kind of feeling on that plexiglass. And there was all these people there, and I was like, oh my God, all these people came to see me. I'm so grateful, you know. And then the lights go on, and I'm in a completely different like hall. And these events happened, and I'm noticing that people are passing by me one by one. And most of them just filed by without even looking at me. A few turned to look at me, but no expression. And just two people, a family friend and my best friend, smiled. So I was going through this angst. Okay, are they going to pass? Are they going to look at me? You know, are they going to smile? And then all of a sudden, so I thought, oh, this is the reception line. Okay, no groom. And I look down and I'm wearing the white wedding dress and I'm in a coffin. Okay, so it was basically they were paying their last respects, you know. So I woke up freaked out. To me, it was obvious this dream was portending my imminent death, you know. And I walked to this man's house at 1:30 in the morning. And he was up because that's what he did. And I told him the dream. And what he said to me was one of the most transformative life experiences I've ever had. He said, no, this has nothing to do with physical death. He said, what this means is that you need to let go of things that are no longer working for you and let them die. And then he proceeds to go over and bring these things he had written, these poems about me and my wanting to experience womanhood. And it was like, how can this man know what I'm feeling, you know? Regardless, suffice to say, it wasn't that night, but a week later, that was my first sexual experience. And it was absolutely magnificent. And I feel so lucky to have had this experience. From that moment on, never, ever did I care what anyone thought of me. It was, I, I transformed into another person, and I will be forever grateful. And it wasn't lost on me. So when things started to happen like that, like, huh, and then it was just as soon as it happened, we drifted apart. I continued my party ways, and he was cloistered in there, studying or whatever. And my life changed, and so I have been paying attention, and the gifts that I have received are just precious. And when I figured out that that's the secret, is to pay attention and take action, that is when I decided I needed to share this with other people.
That is so beautiful. My art career actually started because of a dream that I listened to also. Yeah, so I think that's amazing that that is what transformed your life, because I definitely woke up and I was like, I need to paint that. And I was like, that's the weirdest thought ever.
That
So yeah, very, very
Okay, well,
similar.
you just brought something to mind because, again, I was buying other people's stories, right? So my mother, I mean, because I was very artistic as a child, so she fed these things to me that, oh, if you're a woman and you're artsy, then you can only teach art. I mean, that's it, right? So I bought this story, and I'm about to graduate in art education. I had 6 more hours and my student teaching. And I had this very short, simple dream. Okay. The doorbell rang, and I go to the door. I open the door, and it's the mailman. And he hands me this envelope. And I look at it, and it's my license to teach. And I looked at it, and I went, I don't want to teach. So I tossed it in the little plastic. I had this little plastic waste paper basket. And that day, I went and changed my major to art history. I went, what do I want to be? And I went, I want to be an archaeologist, because I had some experiences with people with that. And they didn't have that as a department. So I had to go to art history. Well, my father, you can imagine, I mean, that close to graduation, he had a complete fit. But then I got a scholarship to study in Italy with this Etruscanologist. So then he was okay with that, because my father was completely self-educated, an incredible person. And then when I was in Italy, one of my roommates, we would be up all night, talking, smoking our Gauloise cigarettes, um, and he said, if you could be with anyone, dead or alive, for half an hour, who would it be? And I went, I don't know what I said. It doesn't even matter. I said, well, who would it be for you? And he said, Buckminster Fuller. And I mean, I had heard that he had invented the geodesic dome, but of all living and dead people, that's who you would choose to be with? Like, huh? And he gets up and he brings me this little thin book, and it's a 39-page poem by Bucky. We called him Bucky. I couldn't call him Bucky. I called him Dr. Fuller. And it was called No Secondhand God. And I read this, and I'm like, who is this man? So I just read everything I could about him. He became my idol. And then, as the universe would have it, a series of events which I uh, write about in the book. I got to work with my idol. So there you go.
Wow, that's amazing. I just love situations like that. And listening, I think, is the big thing there.
Yes.
And so it's beautiful to see that. So, as you know, our podcast is about transformation and creating something positive out of something that could be perceived as negative in your world. Can you tell us a little bit about a journey in your own life that kind of follows that path?
Okay, well, that first experience was in a way that. But I think my relationship with my husband is, I would say, more important to me. So I was successfully single until I was 45 years old. And and I remember, and it was, I am crediting the book A Course in Miracles for agreeing to marry my husband, because I thought, I'm going to keep coming back and dealing with these same issues. I better get married. I better face the music. Because I don't want to keep coming back. So I agreed to marry him. And very early on in our relationship, I discovered that this wonderful, mild mannered man was a rager. He had severe anger issues, all childhood related, childhood issues. And so, like, I would innocently, I don't know, cross my eyes, or some gesture that he would perceive to be putting him down or degrading him or whatever. And he would, no matter how many times I said, why don't you qualify before you rage? No, it was involuntary. He would get beet red and just rage at me. I mean, he sabotaged romantic getaways, and I stayed because I saw how much he wanted the relationship and how much he tried. Like, he found the perfect therapist, continued to rage. He found a men's group of ragers. He became the poster boy, continued to rage. Finally, I had enough, and guess what? I left because I could. All right. So within, and I went and lived with a friend of mine who was actually going through a divorce. Okay, so here are these three things that happened within 2 months. Okay, I decided I never wanted to see this guy again. I'd made my decision. I have free will, and I can make a decision like that. Okay, so I decided. And so my friend gave me her divorce attorney's business card. I had it in my hand, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to open A Course in Miracles. Now, I how I found that book, I resisted for over 2 years to read the book because it looked too much like the Bible. It was given to me. I just refused, and then I was forced. So that's another story. Okay. So, and my rule was, when I opened the book and I read something, even if I didn't want to read it, I had to read it. So I went, okay, I'm ready. I was kind of scared before because I don't know, because it like wants you to unite with your fellow man, and I wasn't in the mood. So, but now I know that I'm free as a bird. I just felt great. I'm going to open the book. I opened the book to a chapter titled The Healed Relationship. I don't want to read this, but I have to. So I started out with the first paragraph, and I'm like, no, this is a different situation. And then the next paragraph debated me. Like, I was reading this debating with a book. And basically, what I got out of it then, because whenever you read something from that book, you can go back and read the same thing and it's a different meaning. What I got out of it was, if your brother comes to you with his hand outstretched, wanting to make contact with you, and you say no to your brother, you're saying no to God, because God is in everyone. That was it. God is in everyone. You say no to your brother, you say no to God. I'm like, oh God. Okay. Well, it's nothing off my back to talk to him. He calls the next day and he wants to get together. And I am bound by this incredible coincidence to invite him over. And he comes over, and I actually sat him across the dining room table, and I was angry, and I said to him, I want you to know that the only thing that is is that you're here in front of me, it's only because of a miracle. And he says to me, well, I have a miracle for you too. I mean, he might as well start speaking Chinese. And I'm like, okay, you first. And he tells me that he was taking apart our fountain in the garden, which is a basin, and then it has a long column, and the water comes out of out of the top, hugs the column into the basin. He tells me that he was taking it apart to fix the pump or something, and the column fell on his hand. And he's telling me this while he's taking off his wedding band. And I, of course, look at his hand. And I mean, if that was true, his hand should be hamburger. Okay. And I look and that there was just like like a bruise with a little tiny scratch. And I'm like, and he shows me his wedding band. And that ring had taken the weight of the cement, very heavy cement column, and saved his hand. Now, that is what I need. I needed something that dramatic to disarm me. I mean, the symbolism of his wedding band saving his hand. Okay, so I'm completely disarmed, and we start seeing each other. And we got back together, or we're getting back together. So now I had made plans to go to Maui, Hawaii, to be my best friend's matron of honor for the third time. Okay, so I wanted to invite Frank, but I had trepidation because of the past. And finally, I decided, no, I'm going to trust. I'm going to trust the universe. I'm going to trust. And hey, okay, so then he can go back home. He acts up, he can go back home. So I invited him to come with me. Okay. So we're going into the taxi, and I went, oh my God, I need reading material. So I run up to this shelf where I had 7 books that I had started reading but never completed. I just grabbed one, and I'm in the cab. And I went, oh no, I wanted the novel. You know, this isn't beach reading. It was called Endless Energy by Dr. Deborah Green, who's a kinesiologist. So there I am on the plane, and I'm reading the book, and I'm like really into this. She's talking about these energy clearings that she does and how she does it. And I'm like, oh my God, I would like one, but it would be great if Frank could have one of these energy clearings. So when we get back, I've got to do some research, and I'm reading and I'm telling Frank about it, and I'm going back to the back of the book because she would cite, like, yes, prayer works. Dr. Larry Dossi says so, and I'm back at the end of the book, and there's her name, Deborah Green, Maui, Hawaii. Not only that, but her address was Kihei Road, where we rented our condo on Kihei Road. Okay, so now what do you do with that? Okay, this is the key here. It's like, oh my God, what a coincidence, No, call her up, you know? This is what just happened. Can we get clearings? Yeah, she tells me when she's available. I go, just a minute. So I said, Frank, look, Kihei Road, Maui. I said, if you agree to an energy clearing, it'll be my Christmas present. He said, well, I guess it's meant to be. Again, you know. So we had these energy clearings, okay? Now, I don't know if it was one or the other or both, whether it was my trusting him or this energy clearing. This happened in 2009. He has not had one anger episode since. I am married to my dream guy.
That's so awesome. I love your storytelling. It just takes us along for the ride. And yeah, it's wonderful. I'm lost where I'm at here. I'm gonna take a step back and tie in Mr. Fuller and your influences spiritually and counseling that you, I guess, aren't doing today because you just retired. You worked with Buckminster Fuller, an icon in futurism and innovation. What did that experience teach you about structure, systems, or vision that still influences your spiritual or your counseling work that you did do?
Well, it has influenced my life. Okay. So one time I went into the office and I had this t shirt on with Mies van der Rohe, who's an architect, and with the quote, less is more. So the person who ran the office calls me and says, Bucky wants to see you in his office. I go, okay. So I go into the office and I got a 15-minute lecture on my t shirt because he was the one that came up first with more with less. And Mies van der Rohe stole it and butchered it up. Well, you can imagine that I would not wear that t-shirt to the office again, you know. So that was, I would say, what was the underlying philosophy of his, you know, like the geodesic dome, cover as much space with the lightest structure. Okay, so I mean, that completely changed my vision of things. It's like, you know, how can I have the most food with the least money? Or how can I dress with, you know, the best with the least money? Or maybe I learned to sew, which I did, you know, so I can dress the way I wanted to dress. So it has influenced me tremendously. And and yeah, as far as counseling goes, I mean, I would say that what I have come to understand with counseling, with being with other people, that sometimes you don't need to say any words. That just your presence there is enough for what this person is experiencing.
That's beautiful. I love the less is more philosophy because I think so often we try to put so much effort and energy into one particular thing or into specific things. And I find this in my own life that sometimes I just have to lighten up.
Well,
um,
energy is a key word. What you know, what you just said was key because I mean, so I'm getting ready to declutter and like I mean, I will do anything but start that, but I have to. And because I know in the past, when I have decluttered, I feel light. I feel lighter. I feel more energy. I mean, that was a very, very apropos word that you said.
You've reinvented yourself multiple times, from architect to designer to counselor. What inner voice or force guided those transitions, and what advice do you have for others who feel a pull to change paths later in life?
Okay, all that's in the book. Okay, because these events kept coming up, you know, and sort of, I never sat down and went, okay, let's do a pro and cons list if I should open a dress designing, you know, thing. No, I mean, it was things just rolled out. And and I listened and I did, you know, I did what and that is a key thing that we have not touched upon. Because I believe that this divine knowledge, intelligence speaks to us through our gut, through our intuition. And the more that you listen to that, you take action, you now have positive results, you trust the gut more, you get more. Okay, so I would say that that is basically what I wanted to express in the book. Now, there's also in the next book, which is True Stories. 7 out of the 10 chapters are my personal experiences. And it's not all after death communication, there's just things around death, before somebody died or after. And So 7 of the 10 chapters are my experiences, and 3 are very close friends. And you can't choose which one is the strangest, you know? So knowing that has completely taken any anxiety out of death. Okay? It's just it's in fact what this has done is sort of how cool that when after we die, we get to communicate with loved ones that we left behind. I mean, it's just, can I give you an example? Okay. So these two things happened after I published the book. So they're not in the book. So I went to my ophthalmologist and I told her about the book. And she says, "Oh, I have a story for you." I went, "Okay." She said, "I had to go to this gala with my husband and I didn't want to go because I was dead tired. But we had to go to the gala. So after that, I had to take the babysitter home myself because my husband refuses to be alone with a female babysitter. So she says, on the way back, I heard my grandmother scream, 'Wake up!' And I came to, and I was heading into a brick wall. And she had just enough time to put the brakes on. Now, that's an unsolicited save. She was unconscious when she heard this noise. So there you go. The other one was solicited. So about 6 months ago, I lost one of my closest, dearest friend, a magnificent global woman. I mean, she was born in South Africa. She was of Indian descent. Her brothers were in Australia, so she would travel there. She undergraduate degree in University of Edinburgh, PhD at the University of Pennsylvania. Came here once and took me to New York to visit her friend Gloria Steinem. So she had a heart attack, and 2 days before her death, I had the incredible good fortune of having FaceTime, a wonderful FaceTime visit with her, where she told me that I was her sister and she loved me. This was a couple months ago. I'm walking down the street. I'm thinking of her and just thinking of her. And then I started like kind of talking to her, and how wonderful it was to be able to have that wonderful visit. And then I said, "Pushpa," I said, "it may be too soon right now, but when you're ready, I want a sign from you." I swear to you, the very next day, I received a Facebook friend request from her. Now, it's happened before. I know it's happened before that I have had a friend request from somebody who's already my friend, but there's no photo of them, and like somebody's trying to hack my account or something. Well, there was her picture. And from my 600 friends, she's the one that shows up and asks for a friend request. So this is how the universe works. And I I want your audience to pay attention, and when things like this happen, to go ahead and take action. And people have said to me, "Oh, these things just don't happen to me." And I'm like, "Okay, how did you meet your husband? How did you get to this career, or how did you?" And they go back and, well, you know what? I had gone into this coffee shop I never went in before, and this guy started talking to, and so these things can already be happening, but you are not zeroing in.
I love that so much.
You cared for your mother during her final 10 months. When you had written in, you mentioned that Nikki episode resonated with you. Going back to that, when you cared for your mother during her final 10 months, can you talk about that time, what it taught you about love, presence, and perhaps even the spiritual dimension of caregiving?
That period in my life was a God-given opportunity to give back to my mother. I was a brat as a kid, and I did some bratty things, and she had to put up with this, and so what this did was just magical to care for her, and to see how her faith brought her through it. I remember in the closer that it came to her transition, the more these kind of otherworldly things would happen. And I remember one time she had her eyes closed and she was pulling away from society. You know, I mean, she was pulling away. She was bedbound. Her friends had stopped coming towards the end there, and so she had her eyes closed. And I said, "Mom," I said, "what are you thinking?" And she doesn't respond to me. And I said, "You know, if you tell me what you're thinking, you're going to feel better." And she opens her eyes and she said, "I'm waiting for God to invite me to his house." And she closed her eyes again. And that told me everything. She was, she had her bags packed, ready to go. And then we were having our afternoon coffee. I would wheel her out in the patio and for the afternoon coffee. And all of a sudden, she looks at the end of the table and she goes, "Whose kids are those?" And I said, "I don't know. What do they look like?" And she said, "They look like angels." And I'm like, "Okay, that's what she's seeing." Okay, you know? And then I was putting her to bed and the door was open to the hall, kind of that led to the living room. And she goes like this and she goes, who are those men in sandals?" And I'm like, "Mom," I said, "Mama, it's 10 o'clock at night. There's no men in here." She goes, "Look, I saw at least two." So I thought, okay, there's men in sandals, you know? And so the very end, I'm not going to tell the story, you know, because it's a kind of a convoluted story, but let's just say I was so dead tired. I needed to go to sleep and I had her caregiver, you know, and a series of physical slaps in the back of my head, three, that forced me to go down and be with her as she made her transition. And I had the caregiver wake up my brother, who was in the other room, and we each took her hand. And what came out of my mouth is not my it didn't come from my thought system. It just came out. And what I said to her, she was very labored breathing. And I said, "Mama," I said, go towards the light." I said, "Where Daddy is in front of 1,000 angels with his hand outstretched to you." And I looked down and she had taken direction and she had transitioned. I mean, I was my brother was in complete, you know, grief, and I was just thanking God for, because I know that that's exactly what she was seeing. What came out of my mouth was exactly what she was seeing. So I think it's you know, time to embrace death. You know, it's something that we don't talk about, but I certainly have, and there's no doubt. There is no doubt, not a trace of doubt, that when we die, we simply shed our bodies, and we are as conscious as you and I are right now.
I love that. Thank you for sharing the small part of that story. I'd love to hear all of it. That's so beautiful. So, when you felt those slaps on your head, it pushed you down onto her bed where she was, but they weren't scary?
Oh
Was it?
no, oh no, it was without a doubt, it was my father.
Mm,
Like, pay attention, you know, like it was my father. My father wanted her to have us, both of us next to her, holding her hand and egging her on. That's what he wanted. And he got his wish. And this is just, to me, you know, maybe somebody else won't think it's that big of a deal. I guess, you know, maybe that's it. It's like, well, maybe, oh, it's maybe just my imagination, or it's just not that big of a deal, or maybe somebody is not putting all the pieces together or something. But I mean, these things have happened again and again and again. And so there's no doubt. See that's the problem. God gave us free will, you know. But God, thank God, I had the presence of having my mind's door just a little bit ajar to get married, get back with my husband. I didn't want children because I wanted to focus. Well, long story, but it's actually the end of the first book. Is how I was introduced to a homeless Turkish girl who had just turned 19. We adopted her. Uh, Mother's Day is my new favorite holiday. I mean, and I didn't want to write a book, and I wrote two. You know, and here's the kicker: I am sublimely happy because of it.
Yeah. When you choose to allow God to lead you and get out of your own way, it's
Exactly.
so beautiful. Yeah. That's a little bit of, you've kept touching on that, but that's a little bit of how this podcast started. It's been mentioned several times during the podcast. I won't bore you with it too much, but essentially, one day I was just cooking as I usually do, preparing for the week's crazy week ahead. And it was just a clear thought of call Shannon, which is my co host. You met her. And it felt okay and freeing and no barriers to be able to do so. So before, I was like, but what would I say? No, that's just weird. And this time it was just so freeing. So I went to my phone, messaged her through the Messenger app because I didn't have her number. And she said, call me right now. And then this whole thing developed.
Oh, well, thank you for your platform.
Oh, thank you for being on here and sharing, being so willing to. Like I said, it wasn't anything I wanted to do, or if you would have told me I would have had a podcast. I did not like the way my voice sounded. There were so many things that I was just cringing at the first few episodes when we started off. And now I feel at total peace that I've just let it. Um,
Well, you listened to that intuition. Your intuition just said to you, "This is what you need to do," and you listened. And um, I've been asked, "Well, how do you know?" I mean, of course, like if your intuition says, "Go rob that bank," you know, you have a brain that can siphon through that.
Coincidence is often dismissed as random. Can you help our listeners understand how you differentiate between random events and what you call divine intelligence?
Okay, and I say it a different way. I say coincidence and then a meaningful coincidence. Okay, so for example, I was writing, and I don't remember what the word was. It was something that a word that I use, like transformative or something like that. And just as I typed the word, somebody on the TV said the word. Okay. Well, that's a coincidence. But so what? There's no meaning to it. Okay. So, but when there is a meaningful coincidence, and I will give you one example of that. Okay. So, one of the two things that happened just before our wedding. So, the first thing that happened was a result of a misdial, a wrong number that got somebody on the phone that I knew who happened to own this big, beautiful, old world hotel and gave us the venue for free. Okay, all right. This one, I get a call from this woman who tells me that she found my driver's license in the snow. So she said, "Well, how can I get it to you?" And so we determined that she just lived a couple blocks away. So I said, "Oh, just put it through the mail slot." And it was an Oregon driver's license. So she wrote this nice little note about how she and her boyfriend love Oregon. Okay, end of story. But it was not the end of the story. So Um, so just before the wedding, and our wedding, we decided to get married on 4th of July, and the date was 4th of October. So it's only 3 months, and the venues were taken. That's why these things are so meaningful, you know. So just before, and photographers and musicians, and so just before, um, just maybe a month or so, just like it was a couple months before the wedding, um, I get a call from the same woman. And she says, I know this is going to sound a little strange, but I just found your ATM card. Okay, so what are the odds of that? You know? So I would go to a certain ATM machine that would spit out the card, you know, would read the card and then spit it out right away. Well, this machine kept the card until the end of the transaction. Then you see on the screen, do you want another transaction? And and I just felt that I already had the card. And so I left so that the next person can go on and clean out my bank account. It was her. Okay. She is the person who sees my name on that card. And so she says, would you like me to put the card through the mail slot? I said, no, no. This was bigger than me. I said, no, you are going to come to my studio and we're going to meet. So I had this handmade soap from Oregon. So here's this beautiful young blonde, little pixie blonde. And so we started chatting, and it turns out that she's a concert violinist. So she offered to play my favorite piece of music, Concierto de Aranjuez, on the violin. And then she got her friend, who was a classical guitarist, because the piece was made for, written for guitar. And I walked down the aisle while these two musicians were playing my very favorite piece of music. How does that work? So again, how easy would have been for me to say, just put it through the mail slot. But God, it's so weird. Oh, just put it through the mail. No, no, it's bigger than me. And I'm not making any of this up.
I love your stories. Oh my goodness. You're the only non academic member of a scientific group studying paranormal phenomena. How do you bridge the gap between lived spiritual experience and scientific inquiry? Have you found common ground? And that pulls from there was at the last part of your application, you had said you were doing that, and I was very curious.
Okay, I am absolutely so excited about this connection with the scientists. Okay, um, and somehow I don't know. I just got uh, this announcement in an email from this group called the Scientific and Medical Network out of the UK. I have no idea why I got this email. And I responded because I just wow, this group sounds incredible. And so the executive director kind of like became my fan, and he had me on once a month. He does this book brief where he interviews a scientist and then features their book. So then I was invited to help plan and participate in the Synchronicity Summit. So, so I was in a 2-day webinar with these scientists, and they're all talking about. Uh, it was very interesting because we had to write an essay, um, and in their essays, they kind of talked like converts, like religious converts. Like, oh, before I had to see to believe, or I had to it had to be measured, and um, and then all of a sudden these experiences started to crop up and change their perception. In fact, in the Course in Miracles, uh, the definition of a miracle is a change of perception for the better, you know? And that summit was so well received that they took our essays. Well, you were invited to write the essay, and then they published the book of essays in a book called uh, the uh, Playful Universe. And I'm chapter 17. My essay's in there, and it's amazing that these people are catching up. You know, it's catching up. Uh, it's and interestingly, so there is this book called Proof of Heaven. Have you heard of it, by Dr. Eben Alexander? Okay, so it's a best-selling book about this neurosurgeon who had a near-death experience, went to heaven, came back, and wrote about it. So he read my book and loved it, and he asked if I would send him my manuscript for the second book when he found out I was writing a second book, so that he could endorse my book. Okay. So he writes back and says, I'm sorry, I can't endorse your book because there's not sufficient discussion of consciousness. That is total BS. The entire foreword of the book was written by Dr. Deborah Green, the woman that did our energy healings. And the whole thing is about consciousness. But what he was saying in code was, oh, I'm a scientist, I'm a neurosurgeon, I can almost die, go to heaven, come back and write about it, because it's an NDE. And NDEs have been studied for decades, but I can't touch your topic with a 10-foot pole. So there was no interest in the book. Lucky for me, just before publication, a new field of scientific study has cropped up, ADC, after death communication. And now the scientists are interested in the book, and it's nascent. So, because right now, synchronicities are trending in science, coincidences, synchronicities, people are writing about this right and left. And so when this kind of comes up, the book is there, So I just feel very fortunate about it.
That is so awesome. When you worked with women who have survived trafficking, how did your own healing journey shape the way you walked alongside others in their process of rebuilding and reclaiming identity?
Well, it was very difficult because not very many of the women would take advantage of my services because they didn't want to rehash it. But the ones that were brave enough, it was interesting because my friends would go, how can you do this? I mean, how can you work with such trauma? And to me, it was like, look, this happened to these women, whether I'm there or not. They've experienced this. If I can give another perspective, a perspective of hope, then I've done my work. So there is a prayer in A Course in Miracles, page 28. It's like 5 lines. And I would say that prayer just before entering the residence and when I left the residence at the end of the day. And I could leave all that behind me. And I could also be present with the women and their pain. So, and it's interesting. I'm going to say the prayer because it answers your question. I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent him who has sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do because he who sent me will direct me. I'm content to be wherever he wishes, knowing he goes there with me. I will be healed as I let him teach me to heal.
That is exactly what I feel is leading me every day. If there's one message, practice, or insight you wish every listener could walk away with today to start co creating their own miracles, what would it be?
Don't worry, be happy, go with the flow.
I love that.
So the name of our podcast is In the Black, and in that is a financial term for being in the positive. And so, kind of like what I explained at the beginning, we talk about how we can be in the red and we can turn that into something positive and create a life that's in the black. What does that look like for you?
Um, to me, that's kind of my MO. It's kind of how I view life. You know, it's why why get stuck in the muck when you can take action? I mean, that's basically it. It's you take action, and you know, it's interesting because my mother would say, "Oh, did I tell you about the drowning man?" And I go, "Yes, mother, like 10,000 times I've heard about the drowning man." She goes, "Well, let me tell you about the drowning man." And she would say, so this man was drowning and he was yelling up to God, you know, save me, save me. And God says, okay, I'll save you, but move your hands a little bit. So it's like, again, it's that co creation, like you do your part and God will do his.
I love that so much.
And where can our listeners find you?
Well, my website is my name, sophiademas.com. And you can get the books through there or Amazon or anywhere.
Thank you again for coming on today.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
it was such a joy. And I love your storytelling.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of In the Black. I hope today's story left you feeling inspired and reminded of the incredible strength that lies in each of us. Our guest today has taken her toughest challenges and transformed them into something beautiful, reminding us all that even in the darkest moments, there's always a way to find light in the world.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe and share In the Black with another woman who could use a little encouragement. Together, we're building a community of passion, purpose, and power. Until next time, stay strong, stay inspired, and remember your story matters. Your choices change things, and being your most authentic self can and will change the world around you.